Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about derived verbs. These derived verbs are also called Salathi, Mujarrad, Mazid, Fi. But before we go into Salasi, Mujarrad, Mazid, Fi, I'll just very quickly recap Salasi, Mujarrad. Salasi means three, Mujarrad means the original form, and this table over here highlights the 6 babs that we have that are Salasi Mujarrad. And hopefully you can see why these are called Salasi or 3 Mujarrad original form. The reason is when you look at all these 6 babs and you look at the past tense, in the past tense only the 3 core root words are used. So for Fataha, and there are many other verbs where the past tense only has 3 letters and there is no other letter that's included in the past tense. So Fataha, Daraba, Nasara, Samiya, Hasiba, Karuma. The only thing that's changing is the vowel on the Ain letter, which is the middle letter. So all the babs that are based on a past tense verb that only has these 3 core root letters, so these are all called the Salasi Mujarrad babs. And that's what our whole discussion so far, the numerous classes that we've had, have all been based on Salasi Mujarrad. Now we are going to enter the world of Salasi Mujarrad Mazid Fi. Mazid Fi means more to it. So this means that we still are going to have the 3 root letters. So we will still have a Fa letter, an Ain letter, and a Lam letter. But before this Lam letter, either over here, or over here, we are going to add something. Either we'll add an Alif, or we are going to take one of these letters like the Ain and double it, or we might add a Ta, or we might add a Sin, or we might add a Noon. So generally the letters that are added are either an Alif, a Ta, a Sin, or a Noon, or sometimes we might take a letter and double it by using a Shadda. So when we do any of these things, then we say that the verb is Salasi Mujarrad because it still has the 3 original root letters, but it's also Mazid Fi because something extra is now being added to our 3 core letters. So that's one point. The other point is, why are these called babs? And this is a somewhat philosophical response, but I'm just going to give it to you so that at least once you hear this and then it will make sense. In olden days, any valuable or important city would have a wall, and then there would be a gate that would lead to that city. So there would be a gate. That gate is called a bab. And the way you can think of this is that in a city, obviously there are lots of people living in the city, but a given city has a culture. People look somewhat the same. So there's a similar culture, people look the same, but obviously at an individual level there are differences, but there are some commonalities. The same way, when we look at each of these babs, there will be many words. So each of these babs opens up a whole city or a whole sort of a universe of words. But the words in a given bab have a certain culture. So there are certain commonalities between all the words in a given bab. For example, if we take this bab, istaf'ala, yastaf'ilu, istif'alan. So this has a meaning of asking for something. When we say, dua istikhara or istighfar, these are words that are coming from this bab over here. It has a scene in it. And the general flavor of verbs that come from this bab has to do with asking for something. So istikhara means asking for something that's good, asking for khair. That's where it, so istikhara, if you think about it, there is khair in it. So asking for khair. Istighfar, asking for forgiveness. So you will notice that these different babs have their own flavors. But at the same time, just like in a city, you will always have people that look a little different, behave a little different. That's why when we talk about the different flavors associated with a bab, that doesn't, so this is not like a very hard and fast rule. The flavor is general, and then there will be lots and lots of exceptions also. Having said that, knowing, having a general feel for the flavor definitely helps. All right. So now in this class, I'm just going to give you an overview of these different Mazid fi babs. So we are going to look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we had 6 babs that were pure Salasi Mujarrad, and now we are going to look at 8 babs which are Mazid fi. In this introductory lesson, I'll just give you a sense for what these 8 babs are about. And then in subsequent classes, we'll take each of these babs. And then for each of these babs, there is the past tense of il madi, and then there is the whole girdan or the conjugation of madi. There is the conjugation of the mudare. Then from each of these babs, we create negative commands and so on and so forth. And later on, we will also look at how we take these verbs and create a fa'il or the doer of these. So out of this comes a whole additional set of words, and that's why these are called bab. That's another reason why these are called babs, because they open up a whole universe of vocabulary. All right, so this was an introduction. Okay, now let's go over specific babs. The order is not very significant, but understanding the names and remembering the names of these babs is very important, because later on, as we get deeper into this material and as we study the Quran, we need to start recognizing the babs. So when we look at a verb, the first thing we'll say is this Salasi Mujarrad or is it Mazid Fi? And then if it is Mazid Fi, then which bab is it? Because that will give us some sense for the rough meaning of that bab. And then a lot of the verbs that are formed from that bab, to come up with those words, you need to know which bab it is, which bab is it. So your most basic bab, or one of the babs, is babe, it's called babe ifal. And for each of these babs, there are 3 important things that you need to know. You need to know what is the past tense form, af'ala. So babe ifal, this is the name of the bab. This is the past tense of madi. Then we have yuf'ilu, this is the mudare, which is present / future. And then if'alan, this is the name. This is the formal name. So the formal name for this bab is babe if'alan, but the short form, the way it is normally called, is babe if'al. So this is the official name, if'alan, but when we are referring to this, we just say babe if'al. All right, some examples now. Actually, before I go into the examples, let me just tell you what generally this does. Generally, this takes a fail lazim and converts it into mutta'addi. What does this mean? Lazim is intransitive, mutta'addi is transitive. This means that verbs that don't require an object. So for example, dakhala, I entered. So I entered doesn't really require an object, or I stood up, I died, something happened to me. Where if I say I stood up or I sat down, so jalastu, I sat down, that is, communicating that, that I sat down. This is a fail lazim. It doesn't require an object. Whereas there are other verbs, and this is something we've seen before, which are called fail muta'addi, which require an object. So for example, if I say daraba, he hit, obviously that also the question will be he hit whom. So that is a fail muta'addi or transitive. Now, when we go from dakhala, which is dakhala yadkhilu. So this is bab daraba, which is salasi mujarrad. If I convert this into babe if'al, what does the past tense become? So dakhala dakhala is actually yadkhulu, so it's bab nasara. If I convert this into babe if'al, I will get adkhala. I hope you see where this is coming from. It will take the form af'ala. So instead of instead of fa, I'll put the dal. So the alif is just added. Alif is mazid fi. So alif is added. Instead of the fa, I put the dal. Instead of the ain, I will put the kha. So it will be ad kha la. So the verb adkhala means to cause somebody else to enter. So the general meaning includes, to cause an action. So one is dakhala, he entered. Adkhala means to admit somebody else, which means to cause somebody else to enter. So I hope you see how it's still related to dakhala, but it is taking dakhala, which is a fail lazim, and converting it into fail muta'addi, where there is an object now. So if I admit you or I let you enter, that's called adkhala. All right. Another example. Nazala. So nazala means he sent down. No, nazala means actually came down. So something came down, nazala. Anzala means it was sent down. So one is just coming down and the other is sent down. So the word anzala again is babe if'al, and this means sent down. And when I say sent down, then an object is required, because if I send down something, like if Allah sent down, if Allah says anzala al-Qur'ana, the Quran is the object. So anzala means sent down, and clearly that requires an object, because if I say sent down, you will ask what was sent down. So that is another example. All right, so this is babe ifal. In this class, I'm just going to focus on the past tense so you get a sense for the meanings. In subsequent classes, I'm going to get into the fail mudare, and then discuss it a little more, and we'll also do all the conjugation. But I'm going to pause here. Any questions so far? Is this making sense?
Arif sir, what did you? I missed this part. Cause and action. That's with the mutaddi. Is that right?
Yeah, so cause and action. So cause and action is just saying I am causing an action. I am causing something else to happen. So, for example, dakhala is like, he enters, or if I want to say I entered, then I would be dakhaltu. But if I cause you to enter, then, or I let you, so I admit you into my university, or I admit you into my house. So I cause you to enter, I let you enter. That is adkhala. So I'm saying that the sort of meaning that is communicated in babe ifal is where a fail lazim is converted into a fail mutaaddi. So we convert the verb into something else that requires an object. So dakhala, he entered, good enough. But if I say I admitted you or I let you enter, then the question is, who did I let enter, or what did I let enter? So, the other way of looking at it is that I'm causing something to happen. So I'm causing you to enter. And these are general ways of expressing things. At this stage, the most important thing is you recognize that there is babe ifal. How do we create babe ifal? We take the madi, So fa'ala, and add this alif fatha before. So dakhala is just bab nasara, dakhala yadkhulu. The babe ifal for that would be adkhala. Why is this mazid fi? Because now the past tense verb has this additional alif fatha that is added. Okay, so that's one bab.
Okay.
And
Thank
now
you.
in the Quran, you will start seeing lots of examples of this. The next bab is Bab-e Taf'il, and we'll have to learn these names. With Bab-e Taf'il, we take our regular verb, fa'ala, and we double the ain letter, fa'ala. So for example, ain, what does, so alima mean?
He
Alim,
knew.
he knew.
Knowledge, gain knowledge.
Yeah, he knew. Allama, this actually, like the previous one, changes the verb from lazim to mutaddi, and it also has an implication of doing an action over and over. So now, if I say change this alima into babe taf'il, that means that the middle letter, the lam letter, is now has a shadda. So allama. So allama, what does allama mean? Allama means to teach. So, or to communicate knowledge to somebody else. So notice how it's going from in transit. So allama, to know, so I know something, that's just, limited to me. But when I say allama, now I'm transferring my knowledge to you. And it also has a meaning of doing something over and over. And that's exactly what teaching is, right? So in teaching, it is transferring knowledge, and then it's not just a one-off. It is something that happens over and over. And, another example here is nazzala. And if you now think about ayat in the Quran, sometimes, yeah, allamal, so he teaches, something. But the example, sometimes you will see anzala, and sometimes you will see the word nazzala. Now, what's the difference? Anzala, as I just said, this means sending something down. So, inna anzalna hu fi laylatil qadr. So, inna anzalna means we sent down the Quran. Who is the Quran? This is Surah, inna anzalna fi laylatil qadr. So, Surah Qadr. So, the idea is that this is like material that we learn in our basic Islamiyat classes. So first, the Quran was sent by Allah from Lawh-e Mahfuz. This is all spiritual stuff. We can't like fully understand exactly what it means. But anzalna, first the Quran was sent from Allah's special place to the heavens, or we can say to Hazrat Jibrail. So that action which happened in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, that action is anzala, because the whole Quran was sent from the Lawh-e Mahfuz to, let's say, the seventh heaven, or the heavens of our world, to Hazrat Jibrail perhaps. So that action was Allah saying anzalna, I sent down the whole thing. But then when the Quran was revealed to the Prophet, it came over time, so bit by bit, and that is communicated with this nazzala. So the Quran, when in the Quran, when the ongoing revelation to the Prophet is described, which happened over a 23-year period, then the verb that is used is nazzala, because to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Quran came bit by bit. So when something is being transferred or happening over time in pieces, then that is communicated by this bab-e taf'il. All right, so there are these subtle points that are built into these different babs. And similarly, going back to knowledge, so allama is transfer of knowledge which happens bit by bit. This whole action of if you look at the name of this bab, so taf'ilan. So now, if this is the name of the bab, but what's the name of this action? So allama. The name of the bab is taf'il. So if you change the ain to fa, so what was this? What's the name of this action? So this is also the name of the action. So taf'ilan, or actually it's simpler over here. Instead of taf'il, instead of the fa, I put the ta will remain. If the fa, instead of the fa, I put the ain. Instead of ain, what will I put? If I'm coming up with, what does allama? So instead of the ain, I'll put the lam. And this ya is a mazid. And instead of the lam, I'd put the. So what does this become? Ta'aleem. Ta'aleem. So in Urdu, many of these words are just picked up, but now you see where ta'aleem comes from. This action of constantly teaching, what's that action, that overall activity? What's the name of that activity? The name of that activity is ta'aleem. You see what I'm saying here? So allama is the verb. Ta'aleem is the name of that action. And that's why we say ta'aleem is the name. So ta'aleem is actually a noun. This in Arabic is called the masdar. So masdar is the name of the action. It's in English, sometimes we call this the verbal noun. So the name of the action. So all these names of the babs, these are actually this is also actually called the masdar. So by looking at this an, you immediately know that this is a noun. All right, taf'ilan, it has this an. So ta'liman would be the official name, but the simple way of referring to it is ta'lim. All right, I think I have given you a fair amount to chew upon. Just the same way, there are all these other babs. So there is bab mufa'ala, where the past tense is fa'ala. So just to check whether you are with me, in here, what's the mazid fi part?
Alif after.
Exactly. So
after
the alif after the fa is the. So I'll just give you one example here, and then we'll close. The idea with fa'ala, with this bab, this is called bab mufa'ala. That's the name of the bab. This involves doing an action to someone, or trying to do something to someone, put an effort where somebody else is also involved. So if we just say jahada, as we've seen in our vocabulary, this means just to work hard. But when you put it in this form, it means work hard against somebody else. So jahada means where you work hard or struggle against somebody else. Now, with Bab Mufala, the name of the. So what's the present tense? It would become yujahidu. So yujahidu actually means to struggle against something else or someone else. And the name of that action, it has two names. So fi'alan. If I take jim ha dal and put it into this fi'alan, into this sort of mold, what will I get? Instead of fa, I'd have G. Instead of ain, what would I put? Ha. And instead of lam, what would I put? Jihadan. Is this word familiar? Or jihad for short? So what is jihad? Jihad is where you struggle against, like there's a jihad against one's own nafs. You're struggling against your own sort of inner desires. Or jihad is also where you struggle against, another party, another army. So jihad, this bab involves a struggle against something else. So attempt to do something to someone, so action that involves yourself and somebody else or another party. All right. So this is bab mufa'ala, and the way you recognize this is in the past tense, that additional alif comes after the fa. All right. So I think we've covered quite a lot. We've talked about 3 babs. We'll talk about more babs in our next class. But in the slides I've shown you all these others. I want you to actually go through them, and you can familiarize yourself with these other babs. This one I talked about in the introduction. Istaghfara. What does this mean? This word?
To ask for maghfirat.
Exactly, to ask. So this bab has a meaning of to ask for something. So ask for istaghfara. Bab like istikhara. What does istikhara mean? When we say dua istikhara, dua is ask for khair. Exactly. So iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. So all those words will come out of this bab, as we will see later. All right. So that is it for today. In the next class, we are going to go over these babs in more detail. The babs are in English also called the derived verb forms, because they are derived from the 3 core letters. It's just that we add some additional letters to the 3 root words. That's why they are called derived verb forms. I want you to try and learn these verb forms, and in the next few classes we'll discuss them in more detail. I'll also try to give you some techniques for remembering them, and we will take it from there.